Hi Booktube, I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I am here in the book shack. It's quite chilly. I have got the heater on, so I hope it doesn't sound too bad. I am going to do, it's probably not the quickest video in the world, on Historathon. Historathon, organised by Vin at Revenant Reads with a load of lovely co-hosts, has been one of my joys this year. I joined BookTube in June or July. Vin's channel was one of the first that I found, and I really wanted to join in. So this is a wrap-up for Q4 of 2023 and a little bit of a preview for my Q1 reads for 2024. So Q4, we're looking at the time period 1820 to the present. I have read loads of this for this quarter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 so far. I might get another one in before the end of the month, but who knows. My hair is still wild, even if I've trapped it in a hat. Anyway, a lot of these tie in also with a World War event that happened in November. But let's get on to it because there's loads of books. So, couple of biographies. Henri Cartier-Bresson, one of my favourite photographers. This was by Clément Chouroux, and it is a pocket-sized guide to Cartier-Bresson's life, how he developed from an artist to a photographer, his rules of thumb, his obsessions with geometry and composition. Quite small, but very interesting. The other biography I read was partly to do with October, and it was Peter Ackroyd's Poe, A Life Cut Short. This was sad. I'm a big admirer, big fan of Edgar Allan Poe. He didn't have the easiest life. He didn't make life easy for himself. And he was so talented. But it says it all in the subhead, A Life Cut Short, and quite tragic, really. Bit of a sad book. Now, World War November. Actually, this one I'd already read before World War November. Elsie and Mari Go to War. This is by Diane Atkinson, and it is the true story taken from letters and diaries and things of two women who struck up a friendship through a motorcycle club, and they ended up during the First World War behind the trenches, and I mean just behind the trenches. They were a couple of 100 yards from trenches in Belgium, working as nurses, setting up hospitals. They were incredible. It was an incredible book, and I could thoroughly recommend it. It was really, there were gaps in there where diaries and letters had stopped, and so the research material wasn't there to fill in those gaps. But still, really good book. Sticking with the First World War theme, I read this, Hugh Strachan's The First World War, and this was not about it wasn't about the actions of the soldiers. It was more about the politics and the plans that were put forward by government and also top-level military of how the war would be fought, and all the mistakes they made. It packs a bit of a punch, this one, and there's a lot of information in there for a relatively small book. The Air VCs I read purely because this guy, Albert Ball, was from Nottingham. This obviously is about the early airmen who won the Victoria Cross, and they were all nationalities who were fighting for the Allies. But Albert Ball is a bit of a hero here in Nottingham, and there's a memorial statue to him. What struck me most about this book was the sad fact that a lot of these VCs were awarded posthumously. What was even sadder was a couple of people who didn't manage to get themselves blown to pieces during the Second World War or crash or whatever, within a few months of the end of the war, succumbed to Spanish flu and died anyway. Yeah, that was really sad. This very small book, First World War Britain, is more about the home front and how people were coping and the way their lives changed while the war was being fought overseas. It's very interesting, lots of pictures, very small again, but it had a lot of interesting bits and pieces in there, well illustrated, enjoyable. This was probably one of my favourites, actually. This is Be Ready, and it's post First World War. It was put together by David Bounds and Robert Fleming, but in association with the National Army Museum. And this, as mentioned before, has different posters. It takes them year by year, so we start with 1914 and progress. And on one side you have the poster, and on the other side you have information about what it was designed specifically to do, whether it was to encourage more recruits or encourage people to buy war bonds, things like that. And there's also information about who designed it and what the reaction from the public was to it. Then we have The Courage of Cowards. This was written by Karen Burnham, and it takes a look at a number of conscientious objectors in the First World War and what became of them. So some opted, although they wouldn't fight, they would man ambulances on the Western Front. Others decided that they wouldn't be any part of the war, but they would contribute towards making things, munitions and things like that. Or they would work in essential jobs in Britain instead of going to the Western Front or any other front. And the final lot wouldn't do anything at all, nothing that would help the war effort, and most of those ended up jailed. Very interesting. 2 memoirs. This was the group read, Testament of Youth. I hadn't read it for many, many years. It's by Vera Brittain, and I don't know whether most people do know this story, but Vera Brittain was a very intelligent woman who had persuaded her parents that she should be allowed to go to university, and she went up to Oxford in 1914. Her boyfriend, the man she planned to marry, her brother, and several of their friends all joined. All of them joined up quite early in the war, and one by one, they died. A couple of very close friends died. Her fiance died, and then finally her brother died. And it is a testament to a lost generation. Everybody should read it. I think it's very poignant. This, To Fight Alongside Friends, is the First World War diaries of Charlie May, Captain Charlie May. He was killed in action on the first day of the Somme. But these diaries that he wasn't meant to keep, they found seven notebooks full of them in his belongings that they sent home to his family. And he reads like a character from an historical novel. He just comes over as the nicest, most thoughtful, kindest man. And he was 27. 27 when he died, leaving a wife whom he loved very much and a young daughter who he worshipped. And I think once I'd finished reading those, at that point I felt quite numb about the First World War. Although I've read a lot of stuff before, I didn't really want to read anymore. So I stopped. Other books that I have read for Historathon2023 Q4. A Woman of No Importance. This was brilliant. World War II's most dangerous spy was a woman. Excuse me. Not only was she a woman, she was a young American woman who had one leg. She had a wooden leg. Virginia Hall was just the most incredible woman. She got... The Germans in the Second World War had her top of the list of spies they needed to find and they needed to eliminate, because she just managed to organise phenomenal things. She got munitions and flights on flights that were coming in. She arranged drop spots. She helped evacuate Jews. She bust people out of prison. The woman was amazing. This book was brilliant. It's written by Sonia Purnell, who apparently is a New York Times bestseller, but it was really well done. A lot of research into it. But the story itself, it's one of those books where the story tells itself. She was incredible. That's it for war stuff. Then we have Starzy Land by Anna Funder. Anna Funder, an Australian journalist living in Berlin in 1990. After the Berlin Wall came down, and she wanted to examine what life was really like for your average East German living for the best part of 30 years under the Stasi. And it's fascinating. She chatted to all sorts of people. And, I mean, there was a woman who was tortured and jailed for a long time, 18 months, 2 years, something like that, when she was 16, for putting a poster up on the wall. Just fascinating stories, and sad again. This wasn't sad, this was hilarious. This is The Devil's Cup by Stuart Lee Allen, and it is the history of coffee. Or rather, it's the history of how coffee conquered the world. From roots in Ethiopia, very close to where humans first appeared, coffee also appeared. This just shows you that coffee and humanity go hand in hand. And Stuart Lee Allen takes a very comical journey following the route that coffee took as it came out of Africa and spread around the world. And so he goes to all sorts of places. He goes to Yemen, which was the next stop. He gets shipwrecked, ends up on a desert island. He goes to Turkey. He then goes to Vienna, where the Ottoman Empire introduced coffee. It spreads across Europe. It ends up in America. It's very good. It's not entirely 1820s to the present day, but bits of it are. And it was really enjoyable. It was a really fun read. This is the last, the most recent one I've read, Voices of the Windrush Generation. And for those who don't know, the Windrush Generation are those people, mainly from the Caribbean, that the British government enticed to come to England with a promise of jobs and making themselves rich, because the British government needed people to help rebuild the country after the end of the Second World War. Some came over on a boat called Windrush, which is why they're called the Windrush Generation. This book is by David Matthews, who is a journalist and also a second generation Windrush. It is a vibrant book. It reads like a translation of an oral history. Each chapter is dedicated to a different person or persons, and that person speaks. And they speak about their life before they came to Britain, and then they speak about their life afterwards. And one thing that comes across is that they were invited, they were almost coerced into coming to Britain because Britain needed help. And when they got here, they found that Britain needed help, but it only really wanted black people to drive buses or trains. And there were signs in windows of houses saying, no blacks. And we really let them down. And yet, a really strong community has grown up out of this. And, well, you should read the book. It's an angry book. It's a personal experience book. It's living history, because it continues in that these people were almost denied residency. Well, some were actually repatriated 30, 40 years after they came over here to help out. Read it. Finally, and I haven't finished this, but I am only 50 pages off. John David and Stephanie Cohen and I have been reading Post-War, A History of Europe Since 1945 by Tony Judt. I'm about 50 pages from the end. We plan to have it finished by the end of the month, and I will do. Never has so much information been packed into, I wasn't say so few pages, but it is actually quite a chunky monkey. But it absolutely throws information at you, and it's the sort of book. I think it's very well written, and I've really enjoyed it. But you can't read it for too long because you've got brain overload, and you need to stop and pause and just take it in. Really glad I've read it though. I'm not going to tell you much more about it because John and Steph and I haven't finished discussing it. So that was Q3. Now I am really pleased that there is going to be Historathon 2024, because I didn't join booktube till middle of the year, and therefore I sort of caught up. I did, I think, one or two books from the first two time periods. So the year is split up into four. As I've said, the final quarter is 1820 to present day. It starts with prehistory up to 500 for the first 3 months of the year. And then April, May, and June are 500 to 1500. And July, August, September are 1500 to 1820. So, first quarter, we're talking pre and ancient history. I have SPQR by Mary Beard, which I meant to read last year and didn't get round to. But I'm going to buddy read this again with John David and Stephanie Cohen. So I'm looking forward to that. MJ Trose. Oh, sorry. No. Yeah, MJ Trose. Boudica, the Warrior Queen. Always been interested in Boudica. Always been interested in strong female representation in history. So that should be good. I've got 3 books then by Professor Alice Roberts, who is an English archaeology professor. She broadcasts regularly on television over here. I have Ancestors. I have Buried, which is looking at funerary rites. And I have The Celts, The Search for the Civilization. So I'll fit those in at some point. And then finally, no, not finally, but finally in physical form, I have Neil Oliver, who is another, he's a Scottish archaeologist and also does great documentaries. I really enjoy watching them. This is The Wisdom of the Ancients, Lessons from Our Distant Past. And this, I read one of his last year, and it was the History of Ancient Britain. This one is more worldwide. It looks at wisdom from ancient people across the globe. So this should be interesting too. I also have a couple on Kindle, but because I'm doing the Read What You Own challenge at the moment, my pledge was to read 100 physical books. So I can't read any Kindle ones until I've done that. Anyway, that's it. I am so pleased Historathon is back for next year. I had such a good, particularly fourth quarter, where I got through loads. So thank you, Vin, and the other co-hosts. I think it's fabulous. I will be doing another video before Christmas. It'll be my regular weekly wrap-up. But if I don't speak to you or you don't drop in before then, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful festive season. Thank you for all your support this year. It's been great. And please like and subscribe if you'd like to. I am very, very close to that 200 subscriber mark now, which is just wonderful. I'd love to hear your views about any of these. So if you have anything to say, please send me a message and I will speak to you very soon. Thank you for popping by. Bye for now.